This is the second video from 7.1 or 6.1 in the 6th edition. And now we're going to take these augmented matrices that we can make with a system of equations and solve them. So the method that we're using to solve them is called Gaussian Elimination, and it's named after a great mathematician, Gauss. And we'll see him, you'll probably see him come up, we'll see him come up again in this class, a great mathematician, but this was kind of his method. And then we'll kind of talk about a little bit of a combination between his and another method in class. So first of all, we're going to put this into an augmented matrix. So we'll just be using the coefficients, right? So 3, -1, 5, and remember we're going to put the answer column there too. 1, -1, 3, 4, 1, 2, -2, and 10. Okay, so there's our matrix that we're going to use this now instead of these equations for all of our manipulating. Okay, so the things that we can do to this are called row operations, and they're very much like what we did with the equations. Okay, so there are three things that we're allowed to do to the rows. So we can add a multiple of one row to another row, and this is exactly what we did when we did the elimination method, right? We'd multiply by something and then add the rows together. And since we have everything in the same order, we're always adding the right things together, right? We can just multiply a row by a number, and we can interchange two rows. Okay, those are the only three things that we're allowed to do with these row operations. Okay, so the goal here is to get ones in these three places, because they're kind of going to represent, that's going to be the x, the y, and the z, and we want zeros in all these places underneath them. Okay, so we want zeros in these places, and then we'll be able to solve this whole equation. Okay, so first of all, we want to get a 1 in that spot. Okay, so the very first thing we do is we always try to get this spot taken care of, and we get a 1 here. Okay, so now of those three things that we can do, which would be the easiest thing to do to get a 1 there, and keep in mind that we'd rather not introduce fractions, right? So I could certainly multiply through by 1/3, and I would have a 1 there. But I would also have a 1/3 and a 5/3 and a 14/3, and then you would have to deal with fractions for the rest of this problem. So if you don't want to deal with fractions, which most of us don't, I don't, then find a different way, right? So figure out another way to get a 1 there. And you should notice that it would be very easy to just switch rows, because the other two rows have a 1, okay? So I want you to use a notation that will keep track of what you're doing here. And I know that you're not going to like doing this notation all the time, but if you will do it and you'll keep track of it, then it will help you in the end. You'll get better at it, okay? And you don't have to do all of it every time, but for the first while, I want you really to do the notation every time. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to call this row 1, and I'm going to interchange with row, let's just use row 3, okay? That's the only thing I'm going to change. Row 2 is not going to change at all. right? So row 2 stays the same. Now I'm going to put row 3 in the 1 spot, and row 1 in the 3rd spot. And there I have it. Okay, so I have my first one in the right place. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to get underneath that 1, I want to have these zeros. Okay, so first I get the 1 in the top corner, and then I get zeros underneath it. The reason why I want you to do it in this order is so that you don't do a bunch of work and then mess it up when you do something else, okay? If you do it in this order, then it won't mess up later. Okay, you can always add whatever row to whatever row. That's fine. But if you don't have zeros there first when we do it later, then you'll mess it up. Okay, so let's just look at how we might get rid of, or get this to be a 0. Well, if I multiplied the top row by -1 and added it to the second row, that would make that a 0, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the top row by -1, so that'll be negative row 1. I'm going to add it to row 2, and that's going to be my new row 2, okay? I'm not going to change row 1, I'm just going to change row 2. Okay, so the only one I'm changing is row 2. So row 1 is going to be the exact same. Row 3 is going to be the exact same. I'm not changing those rows, okay? All I'm going to do is change row 2. All right, so when I do that, I'm going to multiply the top row by -1. So that'll be -1, -2, +2, -10. I'm going to add it to the second row. 1, -1, 3, 4. And add these together. So -1 plus 1 is 0. -2 and -1 is -3. 2 plus 3 is 5. -10 plus 4 is -6. And that's what goes in row 2. Okay, so now I have a 1 in the first place. That's good. I have a 0 in the second place. That's good. Now I want a 0 on the bottom. So how can I get that 0? Well, I can use the 1 I've got on the top row, and I can multiply the top row by -3. So -3 times row 1. I'm going to add that to row 3. That will be my new row 3. So row 3 is the only row I'm changing. I know I'm going to use row 1. I'm going to multiply it by -3, but I'm not going to change it. Okay, I'm going to use it to change row 3, but I'm not going to change row 1. It's staying the same. I'm only changing one row at a time. Okay, so to figure out what goes in row 3, I'm going to multiply row 1 by -3, -3, -6, +6, and -30. All right, and then I got 3, -1, 5, and 14, as I recall that is. Okay, so that'd be 0. This would be -7. This will be 11, and this will be -16. And that's what goes in this bottom row here. Okay, so I got this whole first column exactly what I wanted it to be. A 1 with the zeros below it. Okay, and now I want to focus on this right here. I want that to be a 1. So try to be creative, okay? I don't want to use row 1 because that has this 1 right here would mess up my zeros if I add that in. But something between row 2 and row 3, is there some way that I could get a 1 adding these two rows together? Well, yeah, so let's see if I did, if I multiplied the second row by 2 and the bottom row by -1 and added them together, that would give me a 1, right? Because I'd have a 6 and a 7. All right, so I want to say 2 times row 2 plus -1 minus row 3 will give me my new row 2. Okay, so row 2 is the only thing I'm changing. I'm going to leave these the same. Okay, then I'll take row 2 and multiply it by 2. So I get 0, -6, 10, and -12. And the bottom one I'm going to times by -1, so that would be 0, 7, -11, and 16. Add them, I got 0, 1, -1, and 4. So that's what goes here. Okay, so you got the idea. We're only changing one row at a time. Now I want to get this to be a 0. Now that I have a 1 in this spot, that makes it pretty easy to always get that next one a 0. I'm just going to times row 2 by 7. 7 times row 2, add it to row 3. That'll be my new row 3. Okay, so row 3 is the only one that's changing. And it's going to be the second row times by 7, so that would be 0, 7, -7, and 28. And add that to the bottom. 7, -16. I end up with 0, 0, 4, and that's going to be a 12. All right, the last thing we want to do is get this bottom number here to a 1. Really, there's nothing we can do but just divide. We're lucky though because it will not make a fraction. So I'm going to times the bottom row by 1/4, and that will be my new bottom row. And so that will be 0, 0, 1, 3. Okay. So now we're ready to solve. This right here says that z is equal to 3. Okay, so that's the first thing I know. I've already got my z. This right here says that x minus z is equal to 4. And I know z is 3, so x minus 3 is equal to 4. And I can add the 3, and I see that x is equal to 7. Okay, so I've got 2 of them. And now I'm going to look at the top row. The top row says that x plus 2y minus 2z equals 10. I'm going to put in, so sorry, I screwed this up. Sorry, that was a y. Y is equal to 7. And when I plug it in, and I can't get it to move the right way. Okay, when I plug it in, when I plug them all back in, I get that x is 2, y is 7, z is 3. All I did is I started with a z and plugged everything backwards. Here's the quiz question. Just type row 2. I'll include this just in case it didn't fit in here.